So our next Earth Talk will be from Dr. April Atwood, who is one of our faculty members in Albert School of Business. April, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the idea of sustainable business in our broader community and society, as well as here on our own campus. I've been aware of lots of people who think that the notion of sustainable and business is an oxymoron, that they really can't go together. And in fact, we shouldn't even be talking about such a thing. I teach sustainable business, and so I'd like to challenge these ideas with a quick skim through some of the sustainable business perspectives that have been operating, many for decades now, and that are growing in awareness worldwide. Okay, first of all, the notion of sustainable business, a lot of people are kind of aware of the triple bottom line approach to thinking about sustainability. The middle diagram with the nested dependencies is a much more modern model of thinking about, instead of three pillars, it's the ultimate constraint is the environment. And most recently, the quadruple bottom line approach is being adopted and considered by more and more organizations out there, where not only is profit, planet, and the people aspect of the activities of the organization considered, but also a bigger purpose is also taken into account. One form of sustainable business that often gets mentioned is the social enterprise. This is an organization where there's a social mission along with a profit mission for the company. As many people have pointed out, to make a proper social impact, it helps to have money. And so having a business that makes money and then using that money to provide benefits to social value to some communities is the way that a lot of, an increasing number of organizations are operating. I don't know if you've ever enjoyed Divine chocolate. It's in a lot of stores, but if you, knowing a little bit about how they do their business, the majority owner of this company is the actual workers and producers of the chocolate. And so communities are being benefited more and more to the extent that more and more chocolate is being purchased. Other ways that sustainable business happens, and we can see company examples. So company operations is one way. Companies have, and these companies are among the leaders in providing sort of living, profitable examples of companies that are doing good and doing better in terms of how they operate their company. Ray Anderson with Interface was just a leader and really changed the assumptions that business was working on, that waste can be avoided, in fact, can be taken responsibility for by companies and can be made into new products. Another business format where sustainability is occurring now is through partnerships. The example in the middle here is just one example. Grameen, the financial investment organization, and Danone, partnered in Bangladesh to establish local sourcing, local production, and local distribution of yogurt that adds needed nutrients, micronutrients for malnourished children in the areas. So it's a great model of sort of a win-win-win all the way around for that that business enterprise. There also are a lot of employee-owned or member-owned organizations through the co-op structure. Some of the examples are here on the right. And those, through their business structure, are set up to act in concert with the issues and the demands of the employees and the member owners of the organization, rather than to serve a profit bottom line. Some of the sustainable business frameworks that we teach about, I want to just provide a really quick skim here, but to point out that some of these, the dates on some of these are pretty old. More than 2 decades ago, there have been people talking about kind of a new way of thinking about, or alternative ways of thinking about how business can operate within society. Stuart Hart was one of the first of these. Bob Willard was a top executive at IBM, and then moved to focus on the corporate advantages of more sustainable activity. Creating shared value is a perspective that was put forth about a decade ago and has had such a big worldwide impact that a lot of multinational firms are now structuring their annual reports around the structure of this creating shared value approach. And finally, this is a more recent from this last decade, increasingly, I think the focus for companies will be not only sustainability, but actually looking at resilience and building a resilient company, resilient to all the many kinds of changes, climate change induced changes, things like the virus that we're encountering now will become a ever greater emphasis. One of our speakers this morning talked about pointed out how sustainability-related actions have led to financial performance that's better than the market average. This is true. So in terms of why companies should think about sustainability, there's a lot of and increasing evidence of financial return. Also beyond that, beyond money, there's lots of other reasons for companies to think about sustainable practices. There's the attracting and retaining talent has turned out to be a huge aspect. More and more people want to work for companies who are doing good in the world. And so companies a lot of companies are changing their practices in order to be able to attract the best talent out there. Longer term competitive advantages are being demonstrated as well. Other reasons why companies need to consider more sustainable activities around the world. Consumers are increasingly willing to pay a price. They say they're willing to pay more for doing business with companies that act more sustainably. We all know that talk is cheap. It's easy to say that, but increasingly their purchase behavior is backing this up as well. In addition, for example, in the European Union, there's now a requirement that companies who want to be listed on those stock exchanges have to report on their non-financial performance as well as their financial performance. So increasingly, there's reporting requirements that are being applied widespread. We see sustainability at work. We can see products and services and packaging and building design, improvements and innovations that are based on sustainability practices, even down to a local restaurant that is built from a shipping container and has a garden and solar panels on its roof. We see sustainability currently influencing processes, thinking upstream and downstream from actual production processes, and thinking about impacts more broadly. Also thinking about traceability issues, being able to identify and verify and certificate responsible sourcing and labor practices. We see sustainability having an impact in the kinds of metrics that companies are reporting on. As I said, the EU has specific reporting requirements for companies who are doing business there, and some of those requirements are now sort of making their way around the world. Any companies who want to do business in Europe have to be paying attention to both to thinking about how they're reporting on their economic performance, but also their social performance and their ecological performance. The CDP, previously Carbon Disclosure Project, has made big advances in how emissions are being reported as well. And that's becoming standardized around the world as well. Almost at the end now, I did want to mention that there are some ways of designing firms now, setting up corporations, establishing corporations that allow for, in our state, they're called social purpose corporations. In a lot of states, they're called benefit corporations. Where social purpose is built into the DNA, the charter of the organization, along with financial concerns. Social is being called out specifically. And private certification that companies can work for is this B Corp certification. This is really worth knowing about if you don't already. Companies who get this certification have gone through an extensive vetting process, certification process to demonstrate their positive impacts in the world. And they are tied to promise that they will work to improve year by year. So one thing that consumers can do is look for companies and products that are B Corp certified, because we can rest assured that they are thinking about their impacts beyond just profit. They're thinking about sustainability. Finally, when people say, you know, why do we teach sustainable business, or why should we teach sustainable business, I really take to heart the perspective of this guy. Julius Walls was the former president and CEO of Grayston Bakery, which is a social enterprise in New York. They do business with Ben and Jerry's, among other companies. He says that, you know, at different times in history, different institutions have been powerful. And he says, I'd argue right now, the major influence on this world's performance is business. If you want to make change, work with the business community to make that change. And his goal, and he has demonstrated, is that you can use business for good, not evil. So finally, that's why I think that not only is sustainability in business not an oxymoron, but I think it's an imperative for our time. And that's why I'm passionate about teaching this the way I do. Thank you.